Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another lecture on this by Siam Society on contemporary architects in Thailand. Please come in forward. The slide that Malina Palasthira has prepared this evening are beautiful. I have a glimpse of that earlier. By the way, my name is Thonburi. I'm one of the council members here. The lecture committee and I have initiated this lecture series because we're interested in the contemporary architects, the minds and the process of who design the man-made environment that we live in or we go to. Often on the study trips, we visited several sites. The sites could be a house, a temple, a palace, a ruin. They all have architects, but usually we tend not to know much about the architectural minds of that, except for the art historical values of these places. Now, if we have architects in our midst, I'd like to find out more. What's the method of his or her madness? Now, Malina, I didn't mean that you have mental problems, darling. I'm sure she's one of the great minds in Thailand because her father is coming. I mean, we all stuck in traffic this evening. The Palestinian family is illustrious, and I think, yay, speak of the devil, he's here. Yes. Yes. เดี๋ยวก่อนผมพอเชลีนะนึกไม่ออกคุณเท็ดดี้คุณชื่อจริงๆคุณเท็ดดี้คุณสภาคุณเท็ดดี้or คุณสภา Palasthira was also a council member of the Siam Society at one point. Now, we don't hear much about female architects, and some of them, they said if you give something to women, they make more things out of it. You give a woman a house, she would make a home for you. You give her a flower, she would make a bouquet for you. I'm sure you give her something, and an architectural mind will add more to it. Anyway, there's some interesting global architects that just passed away a few years ago. Her name is Zaha Hadid. I think she's probably laughing in her grave. My name is Zaha Hadid. I'm glad you get the joke. Anyway, Malina and John, her partner, has designed a lot of projects in Thailand, including, have you heard of Wonderfruit? Raise your hand if you heard of Wonderfruit. Oh my God, you're younger than we thought. Have you heard of Woodstock? Yes. It's an answer of Woodstock meets Burning Man for Thailand. She designed the banquet hall for Wonderfruit. And with ecological mind and the vision of having everything environmentally friendly, this is, I think, one of your visions, I guess. So, I'm very proud to introduce Malina, and not too much further ado, I will give the stage to her. You have read all her achievements on the pamphlets, and I think we're ready. Thank you very much.
Hello. I feel like I'm talking to family. I know probably 90% of the people here. So that helps. Excuse me. First of all, thank you so much, Pito and P. Kanita, whom I don't see here, for inviting me to join this series. The speaker before me a few weeks ago, or was it last week? Last week, maybe, was Kunlek Bunnak, who does really big projects and very big resorts, and he's been working for 40 years and so on. So it's good to have different scales, different types of firms, because I think there's so many ways you can be an architect, which is why one of the reasons I chose the profession. First of all, just want to talk a little bit about the title that I chose, Design for a Small Planet. It's actually a title that I kind of reworded from a book titled Cities for a Small Planet, a very small pink book that came out 20 years ago while I was an architecture student by Sir Richard Rogers, the British architect that most of you probably know for these mega projects that he does. He's actually very ecologically minded, if you believe it. A lot of his buildings, they look very high-tech, but they usually consume very little energy, save water, do all those things that they're supposed to do. So this book that came out in '97, that it was based on his lecture in 1995. Maybe I should just stop pretending and wear my glasses. Okay, and I'm maybe a bit too short for this, but no, it's okay. This book was very influential for me, even though it's a tiny book, because it's mainly about the population growth and the growth of cities and its impact on the planet. It also demonstrates how future cities could provide the springboard for restoring humanity's harmony with its environment. It's the first time I heard the term human-induced climate change, and that's a lecture he gave 23 years ago. And some people still not believing in that, but you know, we're still working on it, right? And that's when I started thinking about sustainable design and how, since architects actually manipulate objects, space, matter, things, we make things that are gonna have to be disposed of or things that are gonna last for a long time. Every mark we make, everything we do should be really carefully thought through, in my opinion. So as a small introduction, I'm just gonna, check my time. Okay, it's good to have. So as a small introduction, before I get to the architecture, and I'm sorry that I'm reading. I know it's the worst kind of speech to read, but I'm not such a speaker, so I have to read. So these are not just holiday pictures, but I'm honored to be speaking at the Siam Society tonight, not only because of the Society's long-standing and illustrious history as one of the oldest and most respected learned society in Thailand, given its focus on research and understanding of history, culture, and art of Thailand, its neighbors, but I feel a personal affiliation and debt to the Siam Society. I grew up in Bangkok in the 1970s and 80s. Most children in my position never got much of a chance to travel around the countryside in those days. In that period when Bangkok was booming and the rest of the country, called by the derogatory term "ban nok," was literally left behind in the dust. Sure, the average middle-class Bangkokian took their families to the various beachside resorts, towns like Pattaya, Hua Hin, Bang San, but they hardly got anywhere as far as Sisachanalai, for instance. But because I came from a Thai-Italian mixed marriage family, I also became a part of a small expat community at the time. I was very lucky that at the time, my father, who's Thai but grew up in the West, was on the board of the Siam Society and was very involved in its activities. Between the age of 8 and 14, Siam Society trips, I went to so many Siam Society trips outside of Bangkok, and they become a big part of my life and now memory. In the early 80s, I remember being dragged over to places like Ayutthaya, Kampang Phet, Lopburi, Sukhothai, Sisachanalai, and many more I don't even remember, I was too young. Historical sites that were either still under restoration or just finished in their first phase of restoration. I remember my mom being so excited when we got to see the ruins of the splendid 13th century civilization of Sisachanalai while it was still under restoration in the 80s. This is a time when there were only a handful of airports, like in key cities. So most of these trips involved getting up super early to get to the bus and travel on narrow, dusty roads in the heat for many, many hours. Other kinds of trips we went on that were more to my liking were the nature hiking and camping trips to the various national parks. The photo on the left is from Puluang, a trip on Puluang. And this one on the right, I don't even know which what or which monument it was. I wasn't interested at the time, I have to say. Other kinds of trips we went on are more to my liking, like the national parks. And one of the memorable ones was Doi Ching Da. We were there to hike a whole day. This is early 80s. To get there took the whole day, and then you spend a few nights on top. Doi Luang at the time was still covered in beautiful opium poppy fields and dotted with heroin processing labs. It made a big impression on me, to say the least, at age 12 to 13. Another very, very memorable trip was to Puluang when we were hunting for rare rhododendrons at the top of the mountain. There was an Ajahn who was an expert in rhododendrons, and I didn't quite understand why we were looking for days for these flowers, but it was very memorable. However, the most memorable trip of all must be the one that my dad took me on to Burma before the revolution in 84 or 85, I'm not sure. My first grown-up trip abroad to a non-first world country. I got to go to Italy a lot growing up, but my parents used to go to India and all these Nepal, and they'd be like, oh, you're too young, you're not gonna get it. It's a waste of time, you just stay here, you know? So this is my first grown-up trip, and I got to go there with my dad. So, you know, thank you, Mom and Dad, for making me do those things. I'm not even going to talk about this. This is something I got from going to Piing's Kathmandu Gallery. Photos by Kun Rabin Bunnak, which is before the restoration. So this is like the ruins of Thailand in the 50s that I never got to see because I wasn't born then. But I got to see when these started getting restored in the 70s and 80s. This is my trip to to Burma. At the time, it was still Burma. And I actually got to see the ruins in Pama the way it was before the restoration. Being a child, I didn't really know. I went back 4 or 5 years ago, and I realized how much they did to it. So all these things, I have to thank my parents, and I have to thank the Siam Society for exposing me to. So now back to, again, I'm still about myself, but soon we'll be talking about projects. So after spending the first 14 and a half years of my life in Thailand, I went to boarding school in England, in the UK, on my own volition, and then I did my undergrad studies in economics at the London School of Economics. I graduated in economics. I wasn't that interested in economics. I was very young, I was 20 years old, and I had like an early midlife crisis. I'm like, what am I going to do with myself? I have a degree, I don't want to be a banker, I don't want to be whatever, you know, accountant. So I went to the Slade painting school for a summer because I did art for my high school, and my art teacher thought I should be an artist. And I went to the Slade, I realized I'd definitely cut off both my ears if I continue this way, because it was very lonely to be a painter. Not my thing at all. So, just to make the story short, started architecture school in England at the Architecture Associations for a year, and decided to move to the East Coast of America, did my graduate studies in architecture and urban planning at MIT. And then one thing led to the next. I was supposed to just go to America to study for 3 years. It became 5.5, 2 degrees later. And then I decided to move to LA, where all the exciting architecture projects were happening in America. And I think still happening, because if you go to New York, it's great, but you're doing a lot of interiors. In LA, you actually get to do ground-up houses, which is, and people like Frank Gehry, Morphosis, all these firms were there. So, excited young graduate, I moved to LA. I worked for other architects in LA for about 4 or 5 years. In the last year, the last place I worked at was a mainly residential firm. And I met my husband, partner, husband, we do everything together, 24/7 person who's right here, who's responsible for at least half of what I'm about to show you. And now a little bit about the firm that we started. So Design Qua was formed by John and myself in 2005. For the first 9 years, it was pretty much the two of us, doing very small projects, including our own house and the beach house and little things here and there. And we taught part-time at a couple of universities. Tan Titinat, who's back here somewhere, a very important person here, he joined us in, you didn't tell me when, but I found out 2014, and became a third partner in our firm last year. Beside the three of us, we currently have 4 other very dedicated young architects in the firm who are all sitting there. And here we go. I went away for more than 20 years, came back to Bangkok in 2005. I went away, this is a photo from, oh, I should use this, shouldn't I? This is a photo from the James Bond movie, Man with a Golden Gun. So anybody over 35 might have heard of it. Was shot in 1974 in Bangkok. And this is supposed to be Sukhumvit Road. It looks like Phedbury Road, but isn't it Sukhumvit Road with the Alfa Romeo? I think it's Sukhumvit Road. Anyway, so I left Bangkok looking like this, and when I came back, Bangkok kind of looked like this. So 20 plus years was a bit of a culture shock, I have to say, coming back. I came back on holiday, but you know, that's different, just going to the beach and hang out with friends. So, so one thing we think a lot about in our firm, I'm just gonna talk about things that we think about, as well as projects, is the climate that we built in. Of course, architecture cannot be driven only by climate, but climate is a huge part of what we do, and it really informs so many of the decisions that we make. The roof form, the amount of light that you're going to let in. So this is these photos that I took. The one on the right is Joshua Tree National Park, which is like the local national park 2 hours away from LA that we used to go to a lot. So Los Angeles is pretty much, the ecology of it is it's desert meet ocean, so it's very Mediterranean. But if you drive inland a bit for 2 hours, you get the Mojave Desert, which is dry and has no water. Everybody has to buy water from tanks. So the other photo is from a hike that I went to in a national park near Vientiane. I can't even remember the name, but anyway, this is a typical jungle photo of the climate that we're in. So just to give you a few facts, I mean, LA would get 15 inches of rain per year and Bangkok would get 60. So when you build something in LA, you don't really have to worry too much about floods or water leaking, you know, and you have to think a lot about those things here. Or, for instance, the temperature swings in a desert. During the day, it could be super hot, and at night, it will be freezing cold. So you have to, the vernacular of it is designed so that the houses actually warm up in the evenings. Well, we don't want Bangkok or Thai houses to warm up in the evenings because it's equally hot, or maybe one degree cooler. So those things we think about a lot. The climate in the Central Plains, I mean the climate in the tropical regions of the world probably very likely be the biggest factor to inform the shapes and materials, floor plan, even like how these buildings are built. These are like typical Thai, houses from different areas of Bangkok, of Thailand, I'm sorry. And there are other regions, of course. Africa will have its own other microclimate, probably have slightly different, and South America. So this is the extreme, like for us, maybe the igloo is really exotic. I'm sure for the Eskimo it's not that exotic, but for foreigners seeing a Thai house like that, that's pretty exotic. But they both really respond to their climates in a big way. This is our house, which we'll talk about. We sleep in this house every night. So this is what we'll talk about at some point as well. Okay, so this is a picture to show you the slightly different situations on our property. The one on the left is the house that was built 50 years ago that's kind of, on the ground. And we had a big flood this year in October 2017 that finally reached our house, because the big flood 2011, whatever it was, that never reached our house. But this last one, where there was no warning, we actually had flood going into the dining room for the first time ever. So, I was pushing for this staff house that we built on the right to come off the ground like this. And it never proved right until I had the water in the house. And I'm like, okay, the staff didn't have to wake up that night at 3 a.m. to move furniture, because we were like, okay, they're sleeping and they're dry. We were waking up at 3 a.m. moving furniture. So, this is just something about climate. Another thing we think about a lot is light, because, in a hot country, you don't really want direct light. All these high rises, I mean, they're probably, I would love to see their electricity bills, but all that heat gain that you get, you're supposed to be protected from the heat. You of course should have light, natural light, daylight. That's how we humans and all animals need daylight, but we need to be protected from daylight. That's why a lot of Thai houses are very, very dark, and they have huge overhangs. Okay, that's for the rain and the light. So, but we have an opportunity, because we get so much sunlight. So how do you actually screen the sunlight that comes into the space? This opportunity is great. Well, if you're in Scandinavia, most likely you don't want to be screening it, because most of the time you want the direct light to heat up the house, right? So I think having this as a constraint is actually a really interesting thing to design with. And this is like some of the effects that you can get from light that is, a surprise once you've done it. Morning light going to a space. So when we design our houses, we really look at how the sun moves, and how the sun moves throughout the year. That's an important thing. This is a house, one of the first big houses we did, that was completed 4 or 5 years ago in Kauai, a holiday home for a family. Oh, I'll go into that later anyway. So another thing we think about is materials. That's again the Kauai project on the left. On the right, it's just a photo that I took in Japan. But I think the materials that we use is important, because in every climate, things will age and kind of decay over time in one way or another, even like the strongest material. So the way we think about materials is we know that, especially in this climate, a lot of things, like we're always complaining how all our winter shoes in storage are like unusable after 2 years because the rubber is gone. I'm like, oh, I'm going snowboarding now. Let's tie the snowboard boot. Oh, it's completely disintegrating my hands. So this climate, this hot and humid climate, is really challenging for materials for buildings too. And I think the fact that we just started adopting concrete as a main material of choice, not by choice, but by economy rather, and not knowing how that's going to age and over time, and how to get the water off the facade, you can end up with buildings that look old after 2 years. So these things we really think about, and we try to use, for instance, I should use this more. So this is like local material. This is a local wood. We tried, this is like something that we found in a stone yard in Kauai. So we try to keep it as local as possible when we can, when the clients are not insisting on Italian imported glass mosaic tiles, which happens, and it's their house. So we balance it out. So some of the projects, I'm just going to really breeze through these, but just to show you this is the firm where John and I met, and this is mostly a lot of John's projects, because he was kind of the right-hand man designer of the firm, and I was more in the construction department. But they did very high-end houses, and the things, with the climate that there was, and a lot of hillside houses. So we've worked on a lot of hillside houses. And of course, grass never looked this green. Oops, sorry, in LA. This would take a ton of water, and I don't have it. So this is a rendering. Another project in Colorado, so this is cold, so you want to let the sun in. They're kind of very typical modernist projects. This is actually rammed earth walls, using the earth on site, mixing it with concrete. This house is on top of a ranch, horses. They really love the horses, living on top of the horses. Again, rammed earth walls. This is another project that John did in New Zealand. I won't really talk too much about it, but vineyards. Again, that's a completely different climate, snow, cold, heating, you know. So this is one of the projects I worked on. LA is very Mediterranean, and this is a very kind of Mediterranean-looking project. They have even, sorry, wrong button. Can I go back? This is going back, okay. Even like outdoor fireplaces on the roof, you know, all this kind of very LA stuff. That not much insulation because it's beautiful all year round. No insects, no mosquito screens. Never had to think about mosquito screens until 2005. So this is paradise. Very easy to design in LA, to make very sexy open plans with big doors and no screens and all that. So this is in Venice Beach. So definitely not much rain. You can not have much overhang. This is like a student project that, do I even have time to talk about this? I have until 8:30, right? 8:15. This is, as a student, I had 2 years left. I came back to Thailand on holiday. I come back all the time because my parents always lived here. And there are all these guards, you know, everybody has their guard houses. And I had this fabulous idea with my partner at the time, my boyfriend at the time. It's like, let's design a guard, like a prefabricated guardhouse that looks really cool, and then we can make thousands of them and then sell them. So anyway, that was the premise of the project. So, so it's like a prefab thing, you know, you can fold. And a very bad version of it got built in my soy in front of my house in '61. Don't go and see it because they did it like right, but 30% of it right. And then as soon as I left, everything was changed, like cut corners. You know, there was definitely the builder didn't have email at the time. 1990, I want to say 98 or 99. So the idea was that this thing would adapt to whichever side is facing on the street, whether it's like the sun side, the more shady side, you know, the context of, because, you know, it had to be on a pavement, you know. And then another thing is, it's quite illegal to have these guard houses on the footpath. It was actually the community in the soy asked me to design something, and I did this, and they were like, wow, that's way too over-designed for us. We just wanted like a shack. But so this one can be, you know, when the police comes and they're like, oh, take this down, this is illegal, it can be turned into a little like bus stop thing with signage and stuff. So it's kind of adaptable. It's got the option of with a septic tank where there's a little toilet, like a boat-like toilet in there. So this was a fun one. Of course, it didn't, you know, we didn't really make 1,000 of them. This is the things like the things with modulating light and air, and it's all adaptable. It even fits on the pavement, the Bangkok pavement. They still have this design for the pavement so that when it's not leveled, we could level it. Anyway, it was a very fun project, but it was the first time I really had to think about this climate and how to deal with it. We had a kit of parts. So you can order it in a box. It comes, 2 guys can put it together. You get the instructions of how to put it together. You know, this is the seats. Oh, and the people at the condo, I mean, not the condo, but the soy community neighborhood said, you know, I had like a long bench so that the guard can sometimes rest. And they're like, are you kidding me? He's not supposed to sleep. Do not give him a long bench. So I had to cut the bench down. But he's sleeping anyway. So just make him comfortable, you know, if he's going to sleep. So so we kind of went crazy with this. We had like the optional kit with the septic tank that, you know, there's a little toilet, and which actually got built, this part. So he's got his own little toilet. He has to close a screen and then, you know, use the toilet it comes up is a seat as well. It's like being in a boat. So going back to my own history of coming back here, 20 years plus years later, culture shock. I came back to my compound where my parents were living, and I had to make a decision. My father bought a great little barn house 30 years ago that became a guest house. And I had to make a decision with the little money I had that they gave me. Say, you can either build a little house, like a little white box in the garden, or you can do something with this building. And I'm so glad that I chose to kind of renovate. I wouldn't call it restore, because if there's any experts here in restoration, I think I took a lot of liberty. That's probably not restoration. That's why I call it the entire revival. I revived it. So before John came, moved back, this is when we bought the house in 1978. It was even a thatch roof. My parents, me and my friend. This is when Sukhumvit was still a suburb. Everybody had 1 meter high picket fences, and now we have 4 meter high walls to protect us from the next condo and all that. Still had a water tank. This is the way I found this house in 2005. It was really cute. It was a bit run down though. And this part was really low. It was like 160, 155. Even I would hit my head. So when John came a few times, he hit his head. One time I thought he was just have to end up in hospital. So I'm like, I have to do something about this house. Plus, one reason why I moved back, besides coming to spend more time with my parents, was that there was a 8-story condo getting built next door to this thing. So here was going to be an 8-story condo. So my parents are like, we're getting out of here. I'm not going to be here for 3 years with construction, dust, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, hang on, I'm an architect and I'm an urbanist. I can solve this problem. So I'm like, don't, let's not do it. Let's not move. And they were reluctant to move because they wanted to live in their old house with a garden, the way we lived in the past. And we already resisted the big exodus to the suburbs in the 80s. I don't know if you remember, 80s and 90s, when there was no train and everybody was like, we must go to the suburbs because we can't move Sukhumvit. It's like a parking lot. So this big compound used to have uncle and his family, grandparents, and us. So 3 families. And when they all decided to move, my parents made the wise choice of saying, I would rather die in traffic than live in the suburbs. So we stayed on. And luckily we stayed on because then the train came in and now we can walk to this, well, is it 1 kilometer to the station? It's a long walk to the station, but you can win to the station. So decided to take this apart. And amazingly, I heard that this is a prefab system, blah, blah, blah. But amazingly, when we really took it apart, it's really amazingly well designed. All the joints, I mean, it's been evolved over the centuries, of course. All the pieces coming together. Coming from, 20 odd years away, I was very impressed and I thought it was very exotic. So I was kind of camping out there with the workers were camping in our property from Ang Thong, by the way, because they were not going to go back and forth. So my parents, I think, went away for a few months in Europe, say, okay, we're going to have like 15 villages living on our property. I think I'm out of here. And they were supposed to take 2 months, but it didn't take 2 months. I don't know how it took. It took a long time. So took it apart. All the pieces came off. Amazing design, prefab design, I may add. I learned a thing or two about some of the connections. I got to meet an Ajahn Chatri or Ajahn Sui, I can't remember his last name, but I want to give him credit for showing me some of the details that he was teaching Thai form architecture because I knew nothing about it. Somebody introduced me to him, but he knew about the connections and how things were put together, and he showed me some photos of things that he's only seen in the photos from the 70s that have not been done in that he's never seen the real building with it. So he said, do you want to try this connection, something kang khao, hoi, lu pi, with some animal reference. So the Fapakon are amazing. We clean them up. And when we took this house apart, one reason was the rafters were cracking, some of the beams were cracking, the floor was all cracking because of the construction next door. So if we were going to save it, I would have had to rebuild it. And it was designed to be rebuilt because it's already moved from Pitjit first, and then to Ayutthaya. You found it in Ayutthaya, and then it's been rebuilt. It's had so many lives already. It's over 100 years old. So doing this was really exciting. And please note the condo behind, how fast it's going up compared to our little wooden box that, like, look at, I mean, I actually had a fast movie that I lost over the years, but I did a movie because I went to the same spot every day. I was taking a picture, and I was like, gee, this condo is much faster. And I'm like, these guys, like, hurry up, keep on scrubbing the wood, you know, you're so slow. So this is putting the pieces together. Of course, I'm not going to go into too much detail. I'm not going to get to the client's work that you might be interested to see. But we introduced new things, adapt, you know, we didn't go for the old Thai form. It's not a restoration. We have steel going through the columns. The columns are not going all the way through the ground. It's a proper slab that we built. But we try to keep as much of the existing character of the house as possible, but bringing the floor up. Now we use this Taitun area a lot, and it's really cool. And now that it's high, it's actually usable. I reintroduced this thing, which was kind of all closed up, to keep it cooler, but it had to have a screen, of course. So I had to get that made especially. So you kind of pull at these things, and you can open and close this. So check out the condo. It's already 8 stories, and we're still putting tiles on the roof. So yeah, it was a labor of love for a lot of these people. This is the detail I was talking about, materials and methods, that this Ajahn saw in books, and we kind of figure it out with the chang to try to hang. This piece is hung. This is a piece that locks the outer beam, we call it rafter, but it's like a beam, and then the rafter inside together in a really beautiful way. So we tried to do things, tried to get back, and then I realized, you know, I had to change almost 40-50% of the wood because it was all rotten or had termites. So I had to go to wood yards, get wood from different houses. So now the new house is made up different houses, but also there's some methods of doing, we couldn't really use like modern tools because then our columns would be too perfect and it wouldn't look right on this barn. So we had to go research some Kwan Yon, some guy who knew how to use this, and we had to find this tool to make the columns not so perfect, because if you use just like a machine tool. So the tiles, that's like a whole story, but these are the old tiles that haven't been made in 40 years, because they told me it's like, found the little stamp, found the village in Thonburi, sent my guy there, and he's like, oh, we haven't made this in 40 years, now we have it in a mold, this is handmade. And I'm like, oh my God, so many tiles broke when the thing came down. The thickness of the new tiles, it's a lot more than the old tiles. Can the beams take the weight, you know? So a lot of this stuff. But in the end, we ended up with a really nice house that we've been enjoying for the last 12, 13 years. This is the house completed. Check out the condo. Inside, it's our bedroom, because you can't really fit much more in there. It's tiny. It's the little terrace outside. The Taitun is really well used, especially when we have parties with friends, because we all like to be outside. Since we live in the tropics, we have some of the details. We even made our own concrete tiles because Bun Tawan didn't exist then, and just before Bun Tawan came in. Anyway, the tiles were so fake around the market, so we made our own kind of concrete tiles in-house. Fun. More stories to tell, but let's keep it simple. This is 3 meters, this is 2 meters. So it's like a 3 by 7, it's 20 square meters. Maybe it's a noble unit, right? 20 square meters, but we only have a bed in the middle, and underneath is a little kitchenette. So this is a bit of a luxury, I know, to live like this, but we chose it, you know? We could have done other things. This is the way we live. My friends, when they come from abroad, they're like, God, you look like you're like in a resort. How can you fit all your clothes in there? In fact, we can't fit all our clothes. But so the next project, next project is again close to home, because we didn't have any client-based work, and we're like, okay, we need to build our own house, so might as well put our energy into that. The original house had a bathroom integrated in underneath. So where this is now open, an open Taitun underneath of the house, that's now open again. It used to be a bathroom here, and there was an interior stair down. But there's hardly any space as it is, so we're like, forget it. We're going to do the outhouse idea of the original, what people in the old days had an outhouse. And we also had this idea of collecting rainwater from this roof. Because there's so much rain. I think coming from LA, I was really obsessed with like, wow, so much water. Whoa, don't have to buy water from a truck. That's great. So I was like, why are we throwing out all this water? Why don't we collect it? And then I love the ong idea, all the jars. But then the ong can't fit anywhere. It's not very practical. So how do you do the ong idea in the city? So the idea is to do this, John calls it the Gatling gun plan. So when I showed this floor plan to a very simple Chang guy, we couldn't really afford the expensive builders. He was like, what am I looking at here? But anyway, water tanks, water columns, 2 sinks, his and hers, and then a toilet and a shower. So underneath was supposed to be a spa. That was a really bad idea because mosquitoes, creepy crawlies. The spa thing was also very Californian. It's like, let's have a, outdoor bathtub underneath. My mom's like, are you sure about this? I'm like, Mom, it's going to be so cool, All my friends will hang out in this bathtub. It didn't happen, luckily. Kind of ran out of money first. And then, when we had the money, it turned out that there's too many bugs. You cannot do this. And it's like humid and like mushrooms are growing in there. So it just became a storage. But you live and learn, right? You do it firsthand. So this thing, it's a mushroom, trying to be that, but thinner. And the idea of these columns collecting water, so the walls would cool down the air that comes through, which kind of works. We still use this bathroom every day, and we love it. And you can see now. At first, there are all these holes and then John's like, are you sure you want everybody to see us from the condo? But nobody can see us. Everybody's very shy. The plants have grown around it in front of a little pond. This is what the staff can see here, but they never really spy on us. It's fine. So, this is the section. It was really a challenge to build with a very simple guy. And then all these are the broken tiles from the roof tiles that were like haven't been made for 40 years. We had buckets of them, and I felt so guilty because when we took the house down, a lot of them broke. So what do we do with it? So we kind of use these roof tiles, recycle them on this, and I think it looks really nice. So yeah, this is, go faster, yeah? So the condo, looking down on us, but no, they can't see anything. Okay, so next one is another little project in the compound that we really like. That is the staff house. I had a very small budget, but the staff had a very basic structure that my grandparents built like 50 odd years ago, and small windows and not very nice. And I thought, God, if I really want to work, like ironing and all that, I'd want a nicer environment. So I think we gave them a nicer environment. It's on the pond. So they used to be in an enclosed room here with one little window, one little door to iron everything. Now they've got this whole ironing area. There's bedrooms above. And it's a very, very small budget. So we're kind of proud of this. We're, again, our own GCs here. So we use very small chunks. So we had to get very involved. And nobody can read drawings. So you're on site every day, basically, which was fun to do. And then I think some of it we learned from the Thai house, which is like, but do steel instead of wood because wood is expensive, but still have that kind of feeling. And then we recycle a lot of the old wood from the existing house that was there before. We have the real ong here in the back to collect rainwater here as well. So this house, I think people who are living in this house are very happy and they stay with us for a long time, and it's the coolest house in the property. They use blankets every night, and don't ask me how. You can be using blankets without AC. There's a fan. This is another small project in the property. It's the first project. John finally moved over. I said, it's okay, there's work here. You can leave your really nice job and get paid nothing for the next few years. It's fun, come, So he came, and this is the first, we never worked together before because we were in a firm of like 40, 50 architects. It's quite big. So we saw each other and we hung out like after hours, you know. It wasn't like working together. So we're like, what if we can't work together? First of all, I told John, if you can't live here, we can go back to the States somehow, you know, just try it out for a few years. And I think John actually really enjoys living here as much as I do, or more sometimes. This is a little carport. We were fascinated by bamboo and concrete. I know concrete's not very sustainable, but it is what we have, and we have to work with it. And this is like our first kind of adventure with bamboo, just weaving it without using any hardware, no nails, nothing, just like a basket. So that was fun to do for the car park. And it doubled up as a bar for our wedding, which is nice, just done in time for the wedding. There's some other odd jobs that we like to do. We have some great friends who are artists, and you know, this was a really fun collaboration with Jakkai Siribut, who did this piece called 78 in Hong Kong. I won't go into the deep, meaningful stuff about it because it's quite heavy duty. It's about the Tak Bai thing with all the 78 people who died crushed in a truck and all of that. You can look it up. But it was interesting to work with him because he had to figure out how to build certain things, and we make suggestions. Like he was going to use these kind of float driftwood to reference the South and, you know, fishermen villages, and we like, how about bamboo, you know, like a kray, like a Thai. So the collaboration was been fun, and then we got to build this as a prefab project, and it had to go to Art Basel. So we built it in his garden, and then had to take it apart and rebuild it in Hong Kong. And it's an installation, you can go inside of it. It's a small project that's really a lot of fun. That's inside with the artists. So our first big, I'd say, you know, not an interior project, but like a client-based project, is this house in Kauai for some very good friends. So thank you, Lynn and family. She's not here, she couldn't make it, but for giving us this opportunity to do something big like that, an interesting, beautiful site. So when we went to the site, it's not in Kauai, not near Kauai National Park, but it has this amazing view of the range in Kauai. And the first thing when you go on it is a promontory that sticks out like a hill, and you walk there, and it's one of those khao ho lon, you know, all the wood's been cut already, only a few little trees left. They're not that little, but you know, it's not like a jungle. So we spotted this great straight tree and this view, and we're like, this is so beautiful. Like, you know, this house has to be about this view. And this tree can be our little reference for the house. So it's the hilly side. One thing challenging about this view is it is where the sun sets. So the sun would set between here and here all year round. So it's a beautiful sunset view, but sunset also means a lot of heat and light coming in. So, you know, so we had to deal with those things. We came up with the basic design of this compound. It's actually a compound for three families. The grandparents in their 70s and 80s, the children, two children, daughter and son, and they both like my age, so have children, you know, in their 40s, 30s, 40s. So it's going to be their weekend house. And, you know, I remember going to all these houses in Hua Hin, like these mansions that people have for their, you know, their weekend house, and then how everybody has to open all the windows and all the doors when like 3 people go. They have to open this whole house, like they have 10 people working there or whatever. So how do we do this so that you don't have to open the whole house if only one family goes? And also, because we want to maximize, minimize air conditioning, electricity, all that, and maximize air ventilation, we made these thin houses. So this wing, basically you can access from the parking, and it's also accessible in terms of wheelchair accessibility for the older parents. So they could go from the car straight to this. This is their suite for sleeping, and this is the shared living space. For the daughter, this is her, the north wing is for the daughter, and this is for the son. So if only one family comes, they can just use one and then open up the top. So it's designed to have that flexibility. Just want to show you the process, the way we work. So we design and think about it, and we do some perspectives and 3D renderings so people can see. And this house is very much about this view. So we wanted this view to be like the kind of wow moment when you get down to it. So as I was talking about south wing, north wing, main house, you can park your car here, and it's totally, it's all leveled to this. And then there's also a pool house that became a guest house. Things keep on getting added, Like, supposed to be a 2,000 square meter house, no, 1,000 square meter becomes 2,000, it becomes, it becomes bigger and bigger. So the pool house is interesting because Kauai has water problems, like a lot of islands and other places in Thailand. So the pool house, under the pool, there's a big water tank, almost as big as the pool. So this house is running on rainwater. So this is something we always push for, and most people are like, come on, what is cheap? It's 300 baht a month. Like, why do we making this tank? But in this case, they really didn't have a choice. And we did a test of the water of the local, my friend's father is a doctor, and he sent it to Kasset, and actually it has a lot of heavy metals, this well water that they're using. So, people don't test, but it's worth testing, I think. So it's mainly running on rainwater. I'm not going to go too much into this because, floor plans are boring. But just to say that this is the one wing for one family. It's almost like its own house. This is another wing for the other family. You can come down these steps. This is the Tai Thun Ban that I love so much, that I use in my own house. And I really like this kind of underneath space that's cooling. And initially they're like, we're not going to be out here a lot, we're going to be up there where it's screened in. And honestly, they're out here all the time, right, Al? Is Al still awake? They're out here a lot. So, right? This is a great space. Because it was like selling the space, like, you're going to be out here. They're like, oh, because it's going to be so like exposed, and the creepy crawlies and the bugs. But actually, it's great. And this was supposed to be a fireplace. Unfortunately, it got cut out. So now it's just what was going to be a fireplace. The upstairs, if you take this ramp all the way, the grandparents' bedroom, where it's completely flat, and it's like a shared living and kitchen and another outdoor area here, which they thought they were going to use a lot of, and they wanted to make a roof, but in the end, everybody was down below. Some photos of the project. This is as you walk into this kind of ramp, bridge thing. And this is also designed so that in the future, it's in the right angle, facing the right direction to add solar panels. If you go twice a month for 3-4 days a month, it's not really worth getting solar panels as of now. The prices make no sense. Like, if you're living there all the time, solar panels make sense, but if you're not going to be there, so this can be added later. This is looking back from the Tai Thun Ban up. To the steps that come down to the south and north wing. And this is looking back after you walk past the building, and there's a little area where we landscape for them. This is from the south wing looking down to the pool house. You see the elevations very different. We try to keep to the original elevation because otherwise, the few trees that exist. This is the tree that you saw in the first photo that we build the house around. Basically, we use the tree as the reference, and everything is kind of built around this tree, which maybe you can see. It should have been highlighted in the floor plan a bit. Sorry. This is the tree. So everything, and in a way, we have this angle, it opens up to the side. Okay, next one. I'm too slow. So materials, mainly local materials, salt pool. This is that view that we wanted to capture, that we did capture. Oh, sorry, the sun is going down here, not down here, so I didn't quite get that right. And this is we did a different thing at the guest house, which is the pool house, because it's collecting water. We actually expressed the fact that it's called a butterfly roof, which is usually not that great for a tropical climate because it exposes the building to a lot of sun. But since it was low down, it had a lot of trees and stuff. We thought we could try this out. It just has to have a huge overhang so it doesn't heat up too much. But all the water on the property is collected by this butterfly roof that goes into this pipe and then underneath this pool. This is like one of our odd jobs, the one that Pito mentioned. This one was like a really quick job. They contacted us in October and the festival was in December. And they're like, oh, we want this huge banquet hall, blah, blah, blah. And John's like, no, we don't take jobs that are rushed like this. It's not a good idea. But we did take it in the end because I thought, oh, it could be fun. It's something not that permanent. It doesn't have to be, you can have fun with this. So we did have fun with it. But we didn't really have time to design. Literally, we had 2 weeks. So it's like, what are we going to do? It's going to be bamboo. It's going to be cheap, because, we pitched a bamboo building. So luckily, we did that carport way back when. So we're like, let's make that 10 times bigger. How do we do this? And in fact, I remember Tan saying, can we explore some more options? Are we doing this again? And I'm like, we have no time to explore. We have to build in 2 weeks, So we did it. We had some other issues with this job. But in general, it was an interesting experience. It was supposed to be like sales as well, because this festival is in Thonburi, so it's referencing sales. But it was really fun to do a job that's made out of like a bamboo. The second phase, had we still be talking to the owners, we would have done this part where you can go up to the scaffold and watch the sunset in Pattaya up here. And this is where they're supposed to be projecting movies, but in the end the projection was like this big, so that was really annoying with a sheet that looks like I just slept in it. But anyway, rush jobs, that's why John doesn't take rush jobs. So the building was a really interesting process. Luckily, it's not too far away in Thonburi. We got to go and build and look at how it's built. Even the beam, 18-meter span beam was made of bamboo bundled together. We don't claim to have this technology. We don't know anything about this to make bamboo do this. But we contacted Marcus, can't remember the last name, Austrian Marcus from CLC, Chiang Mai Live Construction, the one who did the bamboo school in Chiang Mai. And that's all they do, and they have like a computer program that shows how the bamboo would deflect and how much force. So luckily, otherwise this would have been just in steel. So really fast, go, go, go. We even had to find our own chang because they didn't have any chang available, blah, blah, blah. And we had to make a pizza oven in 3 days, and I think the concrete was still drying when Paolo from up here put his first pizza in. It was like, hang on, is the concrete dry yet? So it was one of these, music festival, everywhere was in good spirits, but it was very stressful for us. And we used cheap bricks on the floors, but it's really nice. So actually, I think it turned out like a nice banquet hall. During the day is quite cool because the site is really exposed and hot. And they, put a band in, some shots. All the lights that they put in, which I thought was kind of fun. This is a project that started 3-4 years ago. I don't even know, I lost track. But it's a very big house, supposed to start half the size, now it's double the size. It happens a lot to us. And we're always like, are you sure you want to have that many staff? Are you sure you want to start? No, you might have to start learning Burmese or Laotian, if you're going to have so many staff, because it's so hard to find staff. I don't understand why people want to have these huge houses. But it will be, well, first of all, I guess I'm making excuses for it, because as a sustainable designer, why am I doing a 3,800 square meter house, compound of houses? It's like having 6 projects or something on this. It looks like a school. So this is the site plan. This is not by us. This is the first time that we got to work with landscape architects. So because it's 6 rai of land, and we could never deal with all this. But this is from PLA. So their site plan to show, this is Sathorn Road. This is a little saw in the back. And the house is in here. We kept most of the big trees, so we had to build all around the big trees. And we always thought about a courtyard house because this is the Ascot building. So you can imagine what's around it. It's surrounded by 50-story buildings. The land is worth a fortune. We never thought it was ever going to go into construction, frankly, because if I had that land, I'd probably sell it and go and live, I don't know, I could go to Hawaii, Mars, anywhere, right? Because you can build 50 stories here. So in the end, these people obviously can afford it. You're not here, clients. So we got to do this project. It's interesting. It's kind of a minimalist house. He wanted this. He took us to Japan to look at some stuff. We tried to keep it with local materials where it's not concrete. That's the entrance to Sathon. This is the living wing. There's a 25-meter pool here. There's a main, this is the sleeping wing, sorry. Sleeping wing, living wing, work wing. They actually have an office with a staff of like 10 in there already. And there's a staff house back here. And there's a mother's house, and there's a pawn house. This is a salvage house from great-grandparents that we insisted to salvage. So again, I'm probably running out of time. Won't walk through this too much. There's again a Taitun area that we love in here, which I'm sure they're going to use a lot of. Even people are scared of insects and stuff, they'll realize that it's a nice area. The living space. So in the end, the living space and their bedroom is not huge. This is their bedroom. This is the above the living, but they have a gym. It's a city. It's a village. I'm sorry, it's a village. They never have to leave here, the house again. Initially, they're like, we want to do a zero-energy house where we harvest all the sun and water and all that. I'm like, you could do that, but it's like, you know, you're in the city, you're on the grid. Maybe you just do almost zero energy, like, you know. So actually, all the electricity is going to be running on solar panels on top of the roof, which is all here of the work wing. We're preparing for when the batteries for the solar panels are more efficient, for the whole house to be on batteries. But now the solar panels are just working for daytime. Yes. So it's under construction now. I won't talk too much more about it. I hope to be able to show this when it's done. So this is our mega projects, and our neighbors are like these types of buildings. So I think my client would love to just be in his 2-story house amongst trees. It actually has some beautiful trees. But you know, in the staff house, there were a lot of old houses on the property that we insisted to keep all the wood. And a lot of the staff house, every single window is different because they're all recycled windows, which we think are so beautiful. And at least we're getting to do that. So this is now our office. This is an adaptive reuse project. We bought these 2 units 6-7 years ago now, I think, and it was a really simple shop house. The front is like this. There's this weird little stair going up all the way up. So the floor plan is almost like this throughout. This is the way the people used to live here that sold it to us here. And there was a lot of demolition. We demolished for like 2 months or something. I mean, it just kept on, the concrete kept on coming because they added so much. The original space like this with the mezzanine was really nice, and it's very cooling, and you never actually need air. These people just had fans. But next door, they added the slab, and the back that's supposed to be open here was all like full of, back here was all full of stuff like bathrooms and kitchens, and I mean, there was just so much stuff. So demolished. We turned it into the first 2 floors into our office, first floor mezzanine. And we kind of kept it. You see, this is the dividing unit. We took the staircase out. We made a separate staircase for the living units above. So we have 3 living units and 1 office below. Because we never imagined we need more than like 100 square meters. We used to be in an office that was 20 square meters for 8-9 years. So it's like 120 square meters is plenty. So this is like the office floor. This is the first. The floor above the office, which is here, a living space that actually our partner gets to use quite a bit because he lives far away. And then this is the 4th and 5th floor we're Airbnb-ing, renting out. So this is what our office looks like. It's pretty much, you know, concrete. The dividing walls come out, so there's more space. This is where I sit. We did things, we're using breather blocks to kind of filter the sun and the air into the unit. We're kind of doing some kind of vernacular-ish grills, metal grills. And we're using bamboo here as well. We try to use bamboo when we can, because actually it lasts forever if you use the one that's treated and it's protected. This is in one of the rental units. Because actually it lasts forever if you use the one that's treated and it's protected. This is in one of the rental units that has an interior staircase inside. We'd like to expose some of the concrete the new concrete pours. We use these great tiles from Merim. We created, I think what's interesting is we created this big courtyard inside the building that goes all the way 5 stories. And then you can go up to the roof, and the roof was supposed to be an organic garden, urban herb garden, you know, all urban kitchen things, but nobody's had the time to do it yet. John was supposed to be the gardener for the last 2 years, but we barely make it up there. It's quite high up. But we did fix it up, and it's got a little roof. It's still under construction all the time. Like this is last year, we added bookshelves everywhere and a little gangway here. So it's ever evolving. This is another project on the boards that it's under construction right now in Merim, another friend's house. It's a low 1-story barn living room, and then there's 2 wings for living, and a water tank and yoga platform, like a flying yoga on the water tank kind of thing, with a great view around a pond. The site is really absolutely beautiful, and our friends said, oh, we want a Chauban house. So we try very hard to be Chauban here, and you know, taking what we learned from the stuff that we've done on our own property. So this is kind of what it's going to look like: the living area, bathroom, for the guest bedroom. This is the parents' bedroom wing. The kids are here, and that's the yoga space on top and water tank. This is like where you're gonna have yoga and bedrooms. We care a lot about which way, I'm not gonna go into details, but which way the sun comes in the morning, where it sets, wind directions, all these things. This is their bathroom. More photos. Oh, and we do make our in-house models. Our big model maker today couldn't make it today, but John I think made most of this model. No, the other one for sure. The big. Anyway, because I always get people from corporate firms asking me, it's like, you make your own models? I'm like, yeah. I don't think anybody's going to make our model for us. Like it's really detailed, and you know, we really have to do it in-house. Some floor plans of, this is the barn, which is the living area, and it's going to have this fireplace that's outside, for outside and inside, which you get to use in Merim for maybe 3 months a year. This, especially, I think the outdoor one you're going to get to use more. So this is the living room. You park there, you kind of you cross this little stream. There's an existing tree that we had to build around as well. There are lots of existing trees. And then this is more like studio space, and above, children's bedrooms, parents' bedrooms. This is some construction photos from the last month or so. So it's a mature site, so we're very lucky. We're not like digging a new pond, and we're not planting new trees. We're just working with what's there. So this is the big barn building scene from the parents' bedroom. And the upstairs is going to be very much like a tree house. And we built by avoiding a lot of the, shaving the trees and avoiding the existing trees. And, you know, a lot of builders don't really care about trees, especially if they're not like valuable trees, so to speak. So kampu, rain tree for them is not a valuable tree. It's like, just pour concrete on it, it's fine. It's not like teak or grisana or all these kind of fancy trees, but some of these trees are 50 years old. I just love trees, and it doesn't have to be valuable trees, and so do our clients. So it's going to be very much, the bedroom's going to be a tree house. So the third project under construction right now is this house in Phuket that has this amazing view, 180 degrees view, I'd say, of Kalim Bay. And It's very modern. The client's from Switzerland. He wants a very modern house, but we still want to make it breathable. You're going to be living outside most of the time. Hopefully never really use air conditioning except for hot days in the bedroom, and very kind of porous house. It's on a hill, so in a way we've done quite a few hill house designs in our LA days, especially John's done probably like, I don't know how many houses on the hill. These are just renderings, so they're not great, but some breather blocks that we're going to use, again bamboo as an addition, and then it's going to have this curve. It's probably one of our first very curvy house, but a lot of like daylight and views, and this is the view from the bedroom. So it's again all about the views, but I call it the kidney plan. So somehow it ended up being a kidney plan. This is very much John's kidney plan, I would say, in this case. So a real round pool, infinity edge, all of that. We're collecting water here as well, even though everybody's like, forget it. But actually it has drought problems, the island, every island has. The views from this infinity edge pool, once it's done, the view from one of the bedrooms. So we're kind of at this stage right now. John with the guys, the builders, a few months ago. And before I end this, I just want to say that, all of this takes the effort of a village. You can't build a building just being the star architect, and even if somebody tells you this, it's not true. You need to have really great collaborators in the office. You have to have a good team who are really responsive. There's so much coordination, especially when you have builders who don't look at your drawings. So you have to go there and say, look, we have a range of builders. We have the really simple guys that we don't even draw details, that we go on site and we just point. For our houses, we can't really afford the expensive builders. And then we have the super expensive who would actually offer suggestions to improve the details. So we're working with a big range, and you kind of need all these people, and it's all about relationships between yourself, your team architects. You have to deal with suppliers, you have to deal with other consultants like engineers, lighting designers. Of course, you have in a house the client rules, because he or she will be living there for the next 30 years, and if he or she really wants something, you're not going to say, no, I'm not going to get you any Italian tiles for this project. But you try, you say, oh, Mary makes beautiful tiles. But in the end, it's a house, and houses are really hard to do. We love doing houses, but now luckily we have other projects we haven't shown, but we've done like a small gallery, and now we're working on an art center. So our first institutional project, which I'm not going to show yet because it's really kind of half-baked, but the house is really where architecture starts. Everybody builds their house, and it's exciting to do. It's got its challenges, but it takes a whole village of any building, of people coming together. It's like sharing a meal. But one architect who's very successful now, I see another architect colleague in the back, Kun Gulapat, one time told me, she'll know who he is. He's a very successful Thai architect living in LA. He said, he worked for INDA for many years. He said, don't forget, the drawings are very important. Before I moved to Thailand, he's like, you moving back to Thailand? Are you sure? I had a little lunch with him, and he's like, don't forget that we are just the people writing the recipe book, which is in the drawings, but the cook is somebody else. Don't forget that. And then in the end, you're going to have to find a good builder to have a good building. You can design the most beautiful thing in the world. You have a bad builder who doesn't read drawings, doesn't communicate, whatever, you're not going to have a good building. So this is what I tell all my clients. Thank you.
Wow, thank you very much, Malina. I'm sure you have lots of questions, so let's start. Who has the first question? Anyone? Please.
Thank you, Malina. Excellent talk, and John, a lot of insightful stuff too, so thank you to John as well. You was just a question, basically. You actually did some work for us as well, but the question was just, Bangkok's going through a lot of development at the moment. We have a lot of big developers who tend to churn out a lot of buildings, which I guess the endeavour is a commercial endeavour. And the question was that there are some that are trying to, I guess, go towards a sort of softer approach and an approach which is much more aesthetic. But the question was, I know you do a lot of projects which are small houses, but clearly you have the ability to work on doing larger projects. Is it something that you seek to do? Because clearly it seems the tendency now is that everyone makes the same building to do developments. So is there something that you seek to do eventually, to do a large project, to be a residential project, but to try
like a condo, you mean?
Yeah,
You didn't want to use the word? The condo? You know what? Find me the client. If he's going to give me enough time to design, I'll do it. It's just about time. Because, I think a lot of developers are used to working with their in-house or whatever, and things have to be done in design in 3 months, 4 months. So that's why they keep on regurgitating the same old things over and over, because I don't think there's that much time to design. But I don't know any enlightened developer that's going to give me 6 months, 8 months to design something. Then you could really come up with something interesting, and you could really have a beautiful condo. I'm not anti-big buildings, because I think in a city, especially near train stations, it should be dense, and people should live in density. The way we live is a huge luxury. I realize, thank you, Dad, thank you, grandparents, that to be living like in the jungle, in the city, at some point we're going to have to become a condo, because no staff, the costs are going to go up. But I think there are ways of doing condos that could be really beautiful. There are condos that are beautiful. It's just like, where's the developer who's willing to do this, to not just keep on doing the cookie cutter thing, like bottom line, whatever. Even luxury, and I think it's the problem with the way people define luxury. Because I had an opportunity to talk to a developer recently from Sansari, and obviously it's all about bottom line. They're really big and they do like ranges, but they're so proud of this one project. I hope nobody here lives there, but it's on Wireless Road. Luckily, small audience, I can say anything, right? On Wireless Road, that looks like it's from London. It's like a building in London. It's beautiful, of course, but it's so out of context. That definition of luxury is having a chauffeur-driven Bentley or Rolls-Royce. That's luxury. For me, luxury is fresh air, clean water. It's not marble, gold, Bentleys, So, thank you. So basically, if your definition of luxury, this is the market, maybe. That's what people want, the middle class, people who start making money. They're like, I've got a Bentley waiting for me every day. That's luxury. For me, it's like, no, give me an electric car anytime, a small smart car. But I think that notion has to change in order to, or somebody has to, maybe there's a market. I think there's a market for the new kind of luxury. Yeah, hopefully. Exactly. Some of our friends can enlighten them. Yes, thank you for the question. Any other questions? You can say, this is so ugly, why did you do that? That's okay too. I want to hear it.
I have some questions.
Yes.
This lecture is marvelous. The way that you talk, we can feel like you generate love of the nature.
Oh, thank you.
And I think it's wonderful because most of the presentation, including the interior. So you.
Am I doing interiors too?
How do you deal with interior and architecture?
We actually do turnkey, so we do the interiors as well. We're not strictly interior designers and decorators, but when we think about a space, we always think about the inside and the outside together. So, and they're not big buildings, so it's really no point. In Thailand, I realized when I moved here 12 years ago, 13 years ago, that there's a separation a lot of times, even for small projects, for interior designer and architect. The architect does the shell, and then the interior designer comes in and say, why is this beam here? How do we get rid of it? So no, we think through to the end, because they're small projects. You know, if I end up doing a huge high-rise, maybe I would have to collaborate with an interior designer, and I'd be happy to do that. We have an interior designer freelance in our company who helps us to make it even more finished. But we actually got fired from, I'm not going to mention which project, but from the interior design of one of our projects, because we're not, we can't really do the themes. Like if somebody likes a certain type of theme, we can do like the interior design that kind of fits our house as an architect. You know, I don't know how to explain it. Sometimes it's too minimalist, or sometimes it doesn't have a theme and it's not warm and fuzzy. So the client's like, okay, you know, I want marble everywhere. Can you do that? And we're like, no, I can't do that. So sometimes we get fired from the interior, but that's fine. You know, somebody else can take over. But in a smaller project, I think ideally it's us thinking through, and I think we've done some, and at least we've done a few projects that are comfortable, I hope. Yes.
Is the Wonder Fruit bamboo salon still there, or did it get taken down?
Ooh, sorry. We had an issue at Wonderfruit because we worked with really, I want to say, I'm just going to say it, crappy engineers that the client suggested. And the steel part failed at some point, or after the steel part started bending. It didn't quite fail yet, like the scaffolding, because it was so understructured. And we kept on looking at the proposal by the engineer, like the sizes of steel. We're like, come on, usually architects draw steels smaller than what the engineer would specify. Why are you doing the steel even smaller than what we're specifying? Are you sure it's going to work? It's like, oh, I've done the calculations, it works. So they had to rebuild. I mean, it's still built the same way it is now, but they had to rebuild the steel part, basically, and put it back up. It's supposed to last 5 years, so it's been...
The bamboo parts left.
Huh? It's still there. Everything, it's still the same design. They just had to take down the steel bits that failed because this engineer was really being irresponsible. I'm not going to go into details, but it's been put up and it, you know, it's back. It's supposed to last 5 years. It's been 4 years, so I don't know what's happening next year. I saw another hand up. Yes, Mark. Ask me. Yes.
Mosaics and tiles from Italy. My neighbor here, Alistair, and myself, were looking at your office. We had the impression that there was a strong Italian influence.
A what?
Italian.
Italian. Oh, I didn't talk about my Italian side. Couldn't fit it into my lecture.
It struck us as being having a flair.
Yeah, well, I'm sure, you know, having gone to Italy every year, my mom was Italian, and Dad and Mom both love, and I love Italian culture. And, you know, before becoming an architect, I must have seen all the great buildings in Italy, and I'm sure that influenced me in some ways. And Dad always had amazing interiors in his house, very modern, Italian Bauhaus, you know, all this sort of designy stuff. So I grew up surrounded by stuff like that, which I'm very grateful about. But thank you for pointing that out. Anybody else? Any tough questions? Yes, Brian.
You mentioned you're a bit skeptical about using concrete for everything. So how do you get around that, and
Yeah, that's a tough question. You know, it is the material of choice now for economic reasons. It is cheap, but now more and more they're making concrete with fly ash, which is like a byproduct of industrial waste. So they're making it much more sustainable. Our concrete is one of these materials that create a lot of carbon dioxide, and they're trying to reduce it in the process, but it is the cheapest material available out there. If you're in America, though, it's not the cheapest. In America, they still build with wooden frames of, you know, pine wood frame houses, which are renewable woods. But in most of the country, the concrete's still there. My only, I guess, I actually love concrete because when it's really done well, it could be as beautiful as stone, I think. But it has to be done well. You know, you can't just do something, it's the finish of it, it's hard to do well, but if you have a nice formwork, which makes it more expensive, but it could last a long time and it could look nice. And also the way you divert water from it. You don't let the water run on the facade of a building. You know, if you do proper flashing, the water doesn't run down the facade, then you don't have this kind of nasty, you know, 2 years later concrete buildings with stuff. So those details are important, construction details are really important to make concrete buildings look good. But I would balance the material with other things, and I would only use it when I know that this is not going anywhere for at least 30, 40, 50 years. I wouldn't, you know, a lot of things just come up in Thailand and then they get demolished like after 5 years, but it's all in concrete and you're like, oh my God, all this concrete, where is it gonna go? It should be, when you use this material, you know it's gonna be there for 30, 50, 100 years. You better think hard about the design and, you know, make it last, design it well. Think about it as a stone, I guess, a cheap stone, if you can detail it well. Yes, does it answer your question?
Yeah, very good.
Okay. Anybody else?
Any other?
Thank you.
So before I give you a little token of appreciation, thank you again, Malina Palasthira. Your design and your work with John shows you that you appreciate a lot from your cultural heritage and also our natural environment. You think about light climates and everything, and you really recycle materials as well. Very beautiful. Congratulations. Thank you. Okay.
I guess I should stay here.
Like that. This way. Here we go.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Wonderful, wonderful.